Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andre. Happy birthday to you. How about that? A good happy birthday wish to Andre. Thanks for being in my audience this afternoon. Good to see everybody. How y'all doing? Fantastic. I really enjoyed the webinar yesterday. Thanks for everybody's opinion. That was a pretty spirited discussion. I really enjoyed that. And I hope next week is as good as this week. I know, right? Isn't that great? Andre is 27, I think he said, or turning 28, right? Yeah, it was really good, Eric. I'm sorry you couldn't make it. Maybe next week, right? Cool. So let's go ahead and talk about chapter. Oh, let me see. Before we go, I've moved the review session from 8 p.m. Friday night to 8 p.m. Sunday night. Did I say 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Sunday night? I think I said 9 p.m. Sunday night. I forget what I said on Blackboard already. Oh my gosh. Hold on, let me look. Announcements. Goodness me. Sunday night at 9 p.m. Okay, so we will be meeting Sunday night at 9 p.m. for the review session for this exam. Okay? Yeah, I forgot. I've got two different classes going on, Araya, so sometimes I forget what I say to one individual class. Cool. So we're going to try to cover Chapter 8 today. I'm going to leave out some parts of Chapter 8 I usually talk about. We're not going to talk about play and some other things this week because we're only doing one lecture. But I'm going to cover some topics this week and hopefully enlighten you about socio-emotional development and early childhood. Remember, early childhood is that time from 2 to 5 years of age, from the time you're a toddler to right before you get ready to go to school. So today we're going to talk about Erikson's third stage of personality development. We're going to talk about the progression of children's self-description and some theories about how we develop gender, the idea of being a male or a female, or as Michaela suggested to us that we need to think about different variations of categories. We need to talk about the progression of children's emotional development during early childhood, and we're going to talk about what you can do as a parent to foster their emotional development. We're going to talk about developing pro-social or moral personalities. We're going to talk about 2 dimensions and 4 parenting styles related to child rearing at this age. And we're going to talk about why you might not want to spank your kid. And we're going to talk about different types of child maltreatment. Okay? Old man brain. Thank you, Mel. Yes, you are right. But you'll be there soon enough. Ha ha ha. Okay, so let's start off with the old classic, Erik Erikson. Remember, I told you all your nursing teachers are going to absolutely love Erik Erikson. According to Erik Erikson, from the age of 3 to 5 years, we are in the initiative versus guilt stage. At this point, you've got a certain set of will, a desire to roam around, a sense of autonomy, if you will. But now, what Erikson said was we're learning how to imagine and create a future, how to have a plan and to do something. See, Mommy, I had this great idea. See, Mommy, I cleaned the blah, blah, blah. See, Mommy, I had a toy party. So in a sense, we're learning how to imagine and create a future, how to try something new and create a plan and follow through with it, right? Now, the virtue of this stage is that if your child learns how to learn a balance between initiative and guilt, they will develop the virtue of purpose, which is the confidence to create and pursue a goal. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a purposeless person who doesn't really have a goal. There's nothing they're shooting for. They're just kind of floating from day to day. We're trying to develop human beings that have a sense of purpose, that have a plan. Where are you going? where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you have a sense of purpose? And so that's what Erik Erikson said that the child begins to develop the capacity for between the 3 and 5 years of age. So now it's your circle's grown a little bit wider. It's not just your mom and your dad. It's now you've got little bitty friends and your siblings. It's your family is sort of the social modality where all this happens. Now, here's the deal. You need to learn how to take a chance, but you also need to learn how to take a turn too, right? So the problem is sometimes kids get impressed with their own initiative, and you can become kind of a ruthless kid, a ruthless person that only cares about your plans, following what you want to do. So in a sense, that can sort of be the malignancy of this, or the maladjustment. If you have too much initiative, if you're too impressed with your own plans and sense of purpose, sometimes you can be insensitive to other people's sense of purpose. So we can't have too much of that initiative. But then on the other hand, we don't want you to be at the same time too afraid to try your own plans because you don't think they're good enough. So balance is the key here. You want to develop sort of the confidence to have a sense of purpose, but at the same time understanding that other people have purposes too. So it's about your plans, but it's also about other people's plans. And if you do resolve this stage, Erikson argued that you develop a sense of purpose, which is the confidence to create and follow a plan. That sounds like me, right, Eric? I feel sort of purposeless at times myself. And that's something you fight your whole life, I guess. Now, the development of understanding. If you remember from age 0 to age 2, you really don't even have a sense of yourself as an object, a fundamental understanding of who you are. So what's going to happen during this early childhood is this awareness of yourself is going to blossom into a more full appreciation of who you are as a concrete and abstract object in space. Remember, objective self-awareness is the understanding that you are an object, and that develops sometime in the second half of the second year, and that'll be on this exam as well. Now, at this time, the child has the ability to have themselves in their mind as a symbol. And remember, children are symbolic during this stage, but they're not logical. So in a sense, what you can say about children's self-development from the 2 to 5 age is that they have the ability to represent themselves using any number of concepts, but these concepts don't necessarily represent an accurate self-representation. So what you're going to see is that children during this age are going to tend to focus on their concrete self-description. So I have brown hair. I can run really fast. I have a bicycle. And that's how they're going to differentiate themselves from each other, based on concrete self-descriptions. And what you're going to see is sort of in the middle to late part of this stage, children are going to begin to include emotional descriptions of themselves. So, hi, I'm Chris. I'm 5. I can run real fast, and I'm not scared of dogs at all, right? So they can begin to incorporate emotional aspects of this self at this age. But you know what? Children still haven't really developed the logical ability to understand and compare themselves to others in the real world. So what you're going to see is that kids' self-descriptions during this age are going to tend to be unrealistically positive, all right? So kids aren't going to focus on the negative aspects of the self at all as a general rule. It's going to be concrete. It's going to have a little bit of emotional, but not much abstract, and it's going to be overly positive. However, you'll notice I do have the star there at the end of this statement. There is some research to suggest that insecurely attached children demonstrate a poorer self-concept at this age. So though you're going to see children with generally a positive self-representation at this age, you might see some of your insecure children to have less positive and glowing self-concepts at this age. It does sound like the best age to be. I can run real fast and I got these cool sneakers, right, Mel G? And then the real world kicks in and you learn that you suck on any given day, right? So Why? Here's the deal. Why can't children do this? Because they don't have the ability to understand the difference between their actual ability and their desired ability. If they want to be the greatest baseball player in the world, doggone it, they are the greatest baseball player in the world. That's that logical inability right there. They confuse their ability with their effort. If they're trying real hard, they don't care if it's good or bad. They just know they're trying real hard. And at this point, kids really aren't engaging in the social comparison. So you're right, Mel, this is a great time to be alive. I like how y'all are talking about this. Now, gender is one part of identity development, which is having a sense of who you are as a sexual being. And wow, now I feel a bit not chastised, but I feel a bit more educated after yesterday's lecture. I'm going to suggest that our society tends to group these two categories into a sense of male or female, although we may say this may be a historical anachronism which will no longer be necessary in the 21st century. Right, Michaela? But I do want to mention some terms to you. So gender identity is the sense of being male or female, or whichever blend you find yourself. And most children acquire the sense of gender identity of being a boy or a girl by 2.5 years, although they're not going to really understand the logical implications of that. So they're going to think of being a boy or being a girl as having long hair or short hair or wearing a dress or not a dress, right? Now, gender roles are the cultural set of expectations that prescribe how females or males should think, act, and feel. And we typically talk about gender typing as your acquisition of these masculine or feminine roles. Now, your book talks about different theories which might explain why we adapt these social roles. Now, the idea is your sex is one thing, your biological sex is one thing, but your gender, your self-beliefs are entirely another. And so there are questions as to how does your gender identity develop? If it's nothing necessarily biological, how does it develop? And your book talks about some basic theories of gender identity, the oldest being Sigmund Freud. Now, we're going to lose the idea of the Oedipus complex, of castration anxiety, of the Electra complex, and penis envy. We're going to lose all that and just focus on the point that Freud thought that at around 5 or 6, we begin to identify with the same-sex parents. So I want to be like my daddy at age 3 or 4, and little girls want to be like mommy at age 3 or 4. Like I said, we're going to strip all the psychosexual explanation for why that occurs, but basically, Freud thought that it was really important that we identify and be like our same-sex parents. So that might be one reason why gender identity develops. Although that would then, I think lots of parents who maybe parents who are not in the typical cisgender kind of sexual mold might disagree with that, because just because you're a gay parent does not mean your child is necessarily going to turn out to have the same sort of gender identity as you do, right? So that's the psychoanalytic theory. Now, I think what Michaela was mentioning yesterday was this idea of social role theory, that somehow or another these roles evolved for males and females based upon historical, cultural, and sociological context, and that these roles might now be outdated. So back in the day, when physical strength was more necessary than it is now, and men were stronger, society developed in a patriarchal way because the strongest got to control the resources. And they argue that men became developed this idea of men as being aggressive because that fit the role that worked back in history, and women became more cooperative and communicative because they had to in order to accept the gender role that was put on them. So there are some people who argue that we're accepting these roles because it's sort of how society's organized. Now, social cognitive and gender schema theory basically say that we develop ideas of who we are as a male or a female. So when you read books, they tell you what males do, they tell you what females do, they tell you what males wear, what females wear. And so we begin to develop these schemas for what boys look like and what females look like. And we have schemas for everything. We have schemas for what fire trucks look like. If I asked you to tell me about a birthday party, you could tell me 5 or 6 things that you would see at a birthday party. So we have associations or schemas that help us organize information. And so we have a schema or an idea of what makes somebody a man and what makes somebody a female. And that sort of relates to what we'd call gender schema theory. Now, the social cognitive theory people take that a little bit farther, and they say that the way we develop these schemas is that we are reinforced for having the proper schemas and punished for doing things that violate the schemas. So if the little boy plays with the truck, his daddy says, good son, I love, that's a good boy. I'm so proud of you. He reinforces that behavior. While if the little boy picks up the dolly, the dad says, oh, boys don't play with dollies, and makes the kid feel bad. And so the idea is that maybe these schemas that we developed are the product of reinforcement and punishment. Michaela, do you have anything to add to my discussion at this point? Actually, do any of you have anything to discuss at this point? Is there anything I could add? So we have this sense of self and sense of gender that begins to develop in the age of 2 to 5. That's when our sense of who we are as a person, our complex sense of self begins to develop, though it is positive and it is concrete, and we begin to develop a sense of sexual identity, and we begin to separate based on gender groups, and little boys will play with little boys and little girls will play with little girls. Although, and it turns out that little boys and little girls, although they prefer to play with a partner that plays with gender-appropriate toys, more important is that they are playing with the appropriate gender. So the little boys are going to want to play with little boys who play with trucks, but they'll play with the little boy who plays with a doll before they'll play with the little girl playing with the trucks. All right. And the same thing for the girls. The girls would rather play with the little girl who has a doll, but they'll play with the girl who has a truck before they'll play with a boy who has a doll. So kids start to separate out and segregate based on gender at this age, although it's really going to peak in middle childhood, and we'll talk about that next week. Okay, now, during this stage, your children go from their terrible 2s when they have no emotional regulation to 5 and 6-year-old children that we hope have some ability to control their emotions. We all know that 1-year-old and 18-month-old babies cry at the drop of a hat. Everything makes them bad. They can't control their emotions. What you need to do as a parent from 2 to 5 is coach your kid and teach them how to deal with their own emotions. Some people think that kids will grow out of their emotions, and that's not really true. They need a little bit of coaching to have that really good emotional development. And so during this stage, we're learning how to use grown-up emotions. Now, we're going to differentiate between self-aware and non-self-aware emotions, or what we call self-conscious and non-self-conscious emotions, right? So before the age of 2, we don't really have conscious emotions like jealousy or embarrassment or pride or stuff like that, because you have to have a sense of self in order to feel a sense of pride. So before the age of 2, your kid's not really even going to have that adult emotion. But this growing self-awareness is going to allow your child to start understanding these more grown-up emotions like pride, guilt, and embarrassment. You're going to see them begin to blossom, so to speak, in the 2 to 5 year old age as children become aware of themselves as a self. It begin to appear in the second half of year 2, and they become more common during early childhood. Now, from the age of 2 to 4, as your kids' vocabulary is expanding, one of the things they're going to learn are emotional words, and they're going to be able to use emotional words like scared and happy and mad, and they're going to begin to consciously understand the antecedent causes that drive them into these emotional states. Whereas maybe your 12-month-old doesn't quite understand why they're angry or why they're happy or why they're scared, your 2 to 3-year-old child is going to begin to understand the link between environmental events and the cause of the emotions. Now, they're going to get more complex in their emotional reasoning as they move into the end of early childhood. So they're going to begin to understand that two people can see the same thing but have different emotions. I got the cookie, so I'm very, very happy. Freddie saw me get the cookie, and Freddie is very, very sad because Freddie didn't get the cookie. Now, if I don't have a theory of mind and I can't understand Freddie, then I'm not going to be able to understand why Freddie wouldn't be happy when I get the cookie. But as our theory of mind begins to develop and our logical abilities begin to develop, we're going to understand that people can have different emotions about the same event. Okay, and most children are going to have the ability to reflect on their emotions, and you need to take advantage of this as a parent and begin to coach your child. So if your child can understand emotions and their causes, it's up to you to help them learn how to deal with these emotions and regulate them. All right, and we're not trying to spoil our kids. What we're trying to do is the exact opposite. We're trying to let them understand how to control their emotions rather than having their emotions affecting them. Now, again, the children who are eligible for Head Start are probably going to be environments where they don't have the kind of coaching that they need to develop this emotional awareness. So your book talks about the EBP program, which was used in Head Start to coach these kids up on their emotions. And basically what they had was little teacher-led emotions lectures, which you could do as a parent, explaining situations that might happen and how you might feel. Emotional coaching, which is when your kid's having the emotional experience, you talk to them and help them understand why they're having it, what the appropriate response is, and how they can get through that emotional response, right? And then having lesson reinforcing communication. So after the experience, talking with your kid to try and understand how they responded and how they could respond more positively. And what they found in Head Start is that there was a decrease in these kids' negative emotions when they got to school. They weren't as disruptive, and they didn't internalize behavior. So when things made them mad, they didn't hold it all in. These children were able to talk about their emotions. And this is sort of what you, as a good parent, are going to want to do. You need to coach your child during this age and help them understand and learn how to deal with their emotions. Regulating emotions plays a key role in children's ability to manage the demands of conflicts that they're going to feel. When they go on their play date, they got to learn how to share the ball. They got to learn to share the swing. They got to learn how to share the tricycle. You know what? In school, you have to learn how to share too. You folks are grown-ups. You have to learn how to share at work and how to cooperate at work and manage your emotions. If you've ever been around a fellow employee that loses their crap, right, and gets super duper angry and can't control their emotions, they're not very pleasant to be around, right? And so it's important for you to help teach them how to regulate their emotions. Now, are you an emotional coaching parent? Are you an emotional dismissing parent? Now, some parents try to tell their kids, don't have that emotion. Be quiet. Quit crying. Don't be mad. Don't think about that. You shouldn't be scared. Now, what you're doing when you're saying that is you may think you're coaching your kid out of that emotion, but what you're doing is you're demanding that they don't have the emotion. We have emotions. What you need to learn, more importantly, is not to hide that emotion, but to learn how to deal with that emotion in a positive way. So don't be the parent who says, quit crying. You don't need to be sad, or don't be afraid. Instead, you need to say, well, I understand that you're afraid, but here's what you need to think. Instead of saying, don't be sad, say, you know what, I understand you're sad that it's not your turn to play with the toy, but it'll be your turn soon, so relax. So what you need to do as a parent is, instead of denying and telling your kid not to have emotions, what you want to do is help them learn how to deal with the emotions. Yes, absolutely, this is what happens to boys who keep their emotions bottled up. We've been told that little boys don't have emotions. You're not supposed to be afraid or sad. You're supposed to be a tough little man. And then we grow up and we're unafraid. We're unable to talk about these emotions that we feel. Absolutely. And Michaela, I think you and I mentioned this yesterday. I feel like sometimes, even though men are in the power part, have the power in society, I feel like there are rules that constrain and damage us internally as well. And I would say one of the big ways in which men are damaged is by being taught that we're not supposed to experience emotions and that that's not a manly thing to do. Okay? No, it's not easy, Eric. And you know, a lot of times when you express emotions in front of some of your Neanderthal male friends, you'll get ridiculed even as an adult. I remember I went over to my friend's house. I've been friends with this guy for 20 years, and I was arguing with the wife, and I thought I could vent to him about the problems in my marriage. I started in, and he gave me about 30 seconds, and he's like, whoa, 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 I don't want to hear about your problems. And he totally shot me down when I was trying to tell him how I was suffering and feeling and having problems in my marriage. And it's just the way my buddy Dave responds. No emotions. Absolutely, Michaela. I feel much better as a human being being able to demonstrate my full range of emotions. I know, right. Well, I can also talk to my wife about how I feel too. We have one of those good marriages where I can say, you know what, I'm very disappointed. And we can have that kind of Dr. Phil discussion. So, morality. I don't want to get too into talking about morality, because as soon as you do, you start talking about religious systems, what's right or wrong, society, fitting in, making a smooth machine, your own independence. I'm not sure. But let's say that morality is the ability to discern between right and wrong, whatever that is. And so what we're interested in at this stage is trying to help our children develop a sense of morality, an understanding of what is right and what is wrong, and the ability to develop this. Now, your book's going to suggest that developmental psychologists think that there are certain emotional experiences that your kids feel and see that are going to affect their development of a sense of morals, a moral compass, if you will. So to the degree that you help your child experience and understand the emotions of empathy, sympathy, admiration, the more you allow your child to see you as a good role model and to feel good about themselves. The fact that kids experience those emotions, they're going to have a better developed sense of morality. to the experience that your kid experiences and sees anger, outrage, feels shame and guilt. These things are going to impair their ability to develop a good sense of a moral compass, right? So, developmental psychologists, who knows what causes children to choose to understand the difference between right or wrong? But we do believe that the emotional experiences that you condition your kids to can kind of help develop this sense of morality. And a lot of times you'll see people who have no apparent sense of right and wrong. And a lot of times these people experience very, very negative emotions as children. And so what they're going to suggest is that to the degree that you can coach your child to understand what other people are feeling like, to coach your kid to understand that other people need pity and help sometimes, to show your kids who to admire, to give them something to admire, and to make your kid feel good about themselves. These things help them develop a moral compass, if you will. Things shown to positively affect moral development. You, as a parent, need to reinforce behaviors that you believe are morally righteous. And you need to, in a sense, extinguish those behaviors, those violations of the moral code that you believe in for your child. You know what? You need to practice what you preach so that your child can model your pro-social behaviors. And the social cognitive people would say, if you can't control your impulses, it's going to be hard for you to make a moral decision. So learning how to self-regulate and delay gratification is a way to develop develop a sense of right and wrong. Now, in your book, they mention a writer, and I'm not going to put the name up here, because the names aren't interesting, but he said that children are moral apprentices. Think of them as moral apprentices. What they're doing is they're watching you, talking to you, and learning about what is right and wrong in the world. If you want to know how your kid's going to learn right and wrong, you have to show them right and wrong. And he argues that there are 4 broad ways in which we can demonstrate right and wrong with our children. The first is by demonstrating care, being nice to your kid, man, and creating a situation where there's a codependency, not a codependency, but a co-regulation between your kid. Hey, I'm looking out for you. You can count on me. And building those same sort of feelings in your child, sort of a reciprocity of warm care for you and your child. So a good warm quality. Now, this seems obvious if you're a warm kind of parent, but there are some parents who are cold and not caring for their kids. And so the first thing you can do is be nice to your kids. So that's how they learn to be nice. The second thing is developing a set of standards and making your child follow them, but doing so in a warm, flexible manner. So I'm talking about having rules, but not punishing you or making you feel badly for violating the rules, but setting up expectations of what you know you need to do. Now, redirection, there are also proactive strategies. It's better if your kid doesn't make the moral mistake so that you have to coach them. So what you kind of need to do sometimes is for your younger kids is you're going to redirect them. When they start to have that poor impulse, you're going to give them a suggestion for something that they can do that is more pro-social. And later, when your kids get a little bit older, and you should be doing this when your kids are 9, 10, and 11 at the very latest, is you're having those theoretical discussions. Well, what if? And have those moral discussions where you go through quandaries and talk to your kid about what the best thing to do in any given situations. What should you do if your friends decide to steal? What should you do if your friends decide to bully? Give yourself your child some proactive strategies to help them make the moral decisions. So you're going to be warm to them. You're going to set up standards for them, and you're going to have talks and give them proactive strategies and sort of put good ideas in their head. And then you're going to have to be open to having dialogue about things that your child experiences. There are some parents who don't want to talk to their children about difficult experiences. You have to give your child the space to be able to talk to you about what's going on in their life so you can coach up these right decisions. Well, Eric brings up a good point. What if they don't listen to the suggestion? You know what? I do believe in free will, so the kid can listen to or not listen to the suggestion. But the idea is that you've got to at least have the discussions and arm your kid with the positive thoughts. Whether they act on them is going to depend on a host of factors. But if you showed them that you really care for them with good relational quality, if you've set up expectations where they feel the pressure to conform to your expectations, and if you've had these discussions up front and given your kid time to process them, you're going to have a higher choice for them to develop these sort of good moral qualities that we want in our children. Yeah, exactly. That's where the sort of the punishment comes in. So let's talk about a very famous theory of being a child, of child rearing by a lady named Diana Baumrind. And she came up with a great sort of theory to think about how we might treat parents, how we might raise children, and how we might classify these different parenting styles. And she argued that parenting is a combination of two qualities: the degree to which you control your child and the degree to which you are responsive to what your child needs. Okay? And she argued you can think of there being four sort of categories of parenting based on whether or not parents have demands and whether or not they are responsive. So let's start by talking about the best kind of parent, the authoritative parent. And this is the parent that has a set of standards that kids have to follow. But if the child has a question, if the child wants to challenge a rule, the parent's willing to at least listen to the child's point of view. I think of this as the perfect parent that we all ascribe to be. I have a set of standards, but if my son comes and says, "Dad, I really don't agree with standard number 8. Can we at least talk about it?" I'd like to think I'm the kind of parent that says, "You know what? Yes, let's talk about this, Junior, and I'm going to explain to you why I have this standard. And if you can convince me that we need to change it, I'm willing to change." And so this is sort of the perfect parent, the James and Walona. You see the picture right underneath me. One of my favorite childhood TV shows was Good Times, and James and Thelma. Was it Thelma? James and Thelma were the best parents because they had rules, but you know what? You could talk to them. And this is sort of the authoritative parent. Now you'll notice that I put outcomes associated with each parenting style in red so that you can see them. On the test, I'll want you to understand these two dimensions and maybe able to even to identify these different categories of parenting. But this is the perfect parenting that we all should be. However, I was raised in the South, and in the South, we have a lot of authoritarian parents. Those parents that say, "Damn it, it's my way or the highway. This is my house. You don't like it? You get out of my house." I don't know if any of you had parents like that. That's authoritarian parent. They have lots of control and lots of demands, but they're not the kind of parents that are going to negotiate with the child. Okay? Now, this kind of parent, your kid needs to learn how to make their own decisions, so there needs to be some give and take, and you need to give your kid a little bit of autonomy. So children who don't have this parenting style are going to be a little less socially competent. They're going to have a little more, they're going to be a little more aggressive, but you know what? They are going to get in less trouble. So the authoritarian parenting style is high in control, but not very responsive. Now, you can think about the spoiled parent, the rock star parent that gives their kid everything they possibly want and make absolutely no demands on them. We'll call that the indulgent parent, right? No demands, no control, but high responsiveness. The best friend parent, absolutely, Eric. And we all know the best friend parent is not a good parent to be, man. Because really, your kid needs to learn some self-control. Unfortunately, if they don't learn it from you, they're going to learn it from society. They may get in trouble. They may lose jobs. Your kid does need to learn a sense of self-control. Children who have indulgent parent tend to also show social incompetence because they don't know how to share and take their turn and control their impulse. They don't respect other people, and they can tend to be domineering, egocentric, and non-compliant. I remember we lived in an apartment complex when I was young and married, and there was a fellow next door that had a teenage son that he let get away with murder. This kid could do anything, and this poor kid couldn't keep a job, couldn't do well in school, and he was so sad because he hadn't learned any self-control. But his daddy was his best friend, right? And then you have the neglectful parent that really doesn't seem to care at all about the kid. Children, this tends to be one of the more difficult parenting styles. And children begin to externalize their problems. They act out on their problems because their parent shows no concern or control at all. Right, and the number of children does depend, right? I would say my parents were a little bit indulgent with me. I was the youngest of 9 children. By the time my parents got around to me, there really wasn't much in the way of control. They were too exhausted, so I got away with whatever I wanted. And it did cause me a little bit of trouble, right? Yeah, being the baby has its disadvantages. So here's the key. We would all love to be authoritative parenting. And on my best day, what kind of parent am I? I'm the authoritative parent. I'm just like James below me on Good Time, and I'm bringing up wonderful kids. But if you're not a perfect parent, what kind of parent are you on some days? So I tell you, some days I can be kind of an authoritarian parent with my kids. I can get a little bit pushy with my young sons, and that's sort of my non-optimal parent style. So I know we're not all great parents every day, and we're not all bad parents every day, but take a look at this and tell me, what kind of parent are you? Or if you're not a parent yet, think about your parents and try to figure out what parenting style they were. How can authoritative and an indulgent parent raise a child together? Wow. Right. The book does talk about there are cultural variations. They talk about the tiger mom, who's a little bit authoritarian, bringing up great Asian children. They talk about the strict respect that you might see in Hispanic cultures might seem a bit authoritarian, but it still has good outcomes. So parenting style is important, but really consistency as a parent is going to be the best for your child. So what's probably good is that if that authoritative and indulgent parent could sort of work together. One of the things that I'm complaining about my wife. Shh, don't none of y'all tell her. But one of the things that I thought is that she can be a little bit indulgent. You know what I mean? And so I am an authoritative parent or authoritarian parent raising a child with an indulgent parent. And I would come down hard on my boys and come up with rules and punishment. And sometimes when my wife wasn't being her best, she would sneak behind me and change the rules to the indulgent style. Believe me, buddy, Mel, we have talked about this a great deal, but I don't want to start this fight again on Tuesday, October the 8th. Oh, believe me, we've had this talk many, many times. It's a recurrent one. That's funny. Thank you, Mel, giving me a hard time. Okay, so here's the question. Should you spank your child? Spare the rod, spoil the child. There are people who will suggest that spanking is okay, and there's some that will suggest that spanking is bad, and some will say it's good. Your book actually suggests that some spanking is not necessarily associated with negative outcomes. Now, the problem with spanking is it can easily become abusive, but if you were spanked once or twice, sometimes it's not the worst thing ever in the world. Okay? So, but there are some negative effects associated with spanking. Sometimes children who get spanked more have more behavioral problems. Is this correlational? Do the behavioral problems cause the spanking, or does the spanking cause a behavioral problem? I don't know, but there are associated behavioral problems and aggression with children who are spanked. Research suggests they're more likely to engage in intimate partner violence as adults. You know what? Learners always develop aversive qualities towards those people that punish them. So if you punish your kid, especially if you spank them hard and a lot, they're going to develop a fear of you. It's best if you can, you can't reason with a 2-year-old, but you can reason with a 5 and 6 and 7-year-old. So sometimes it might be more effective to reason with the child. Okay? Now, the problem with punishment is if you do it when you're angry, you present an out-of-control model. You're not teaching anything but what you can do as an angry person. I remember I used to spank my oldest child, and I caught him trying to spank his younger brother when he was 5. He thought that that's what you did when somebody made you mad. And where did he learn that? He learned that from his out-of-control father spanking him. It can instill fear, avoidance, or rage. My boys are less likely to talk to me about their problems than their mom. They always go to her first because they're a little bit afraid of me. You know what? Punishment also doesn't tell your child what to do. It tells them what not to do. And it's very easy for punishment to be abusive. So, yeah, maybe you don't want to get the stick from outside. Right. It's something I earned as the rule giver, and when I get upset about it and it starts to bother me, I just remember that I earned this by being the spanker in the family. My dad used to spank me, my bare butt too. He would always wait till I was getting ready to take a bath. I'd have the clothes off, and then he'd come in there with the belt and whoop my naked ass. It certainly hurt, right? Now, if you're going to punish, here's some rules for it. Please use it sparingly. Don't use it as something you do every day. Don't threaten it every day. It should be rare, rare, rare. Instead, find ways to find what your kid's doing that you like and reinforce that behavior. If you're going to punish, punish immediately. Don't say, just wait till your father gets home and punish them later. No, no, no. If you're going to do it quickly, and it's got to be a little bit aversive. It's got to be something the kid doesn't like. Afterwards, you explain why you punished, and don't confuse your kid by saying you're sorry. You may say, what do you mean, Chris? If you're sorry enough that you don't want to punish, then don't spank. But if you do spank, you should feel confident enough that you're not apologizing for spanking your kid. Does that make sense? I don't apologize to you. I explain to you why you got the spanking. And don't do it when you're angry. Try to have a cool head when you're going to spank, because you do not want to get abusive. Yes, and I have a feeling that my kids will be scared of me until I become older. I'm not sure. Sometimes I think kids are supposed to be scared of their dad. I take that gender role theory that I was telling you I don't believe in, Michaela, and sometimes I think it's important for kids to be scared of their dad and be sweet on their mom. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a sexist, chauvinistic male. Crap, I knew it. Mel G called me out. Doggone it, I didn't even get 2 minutes with that comment. Please forgive me for my sexist nature, Mel. I am working to be a better person. Okay, quickly, 4 types of child maltreatment. Due to physical abuse, neglect, which is the most common, sexual abuse, and emotional abuse. Parents are more likely to abuse when they have parenting stress, when they have substance abuse problems, when they're isolated, single parenting, or poor. Right now, one of the reasons that some people want to get kids back into school is because this isolation for parents with the COVID virus is making it easier or more likely for parents to engage in these types of children maltreatment. You know what? About 1/3 of the parents who are abused go on to abuse their children. It's really difficult to stop the cycle. Now, the developmental consequences of maltreating your child is they're not going to learn to regulate their emotions. They're going to have attachment problems, which will make it difficult for them to have close adult relationships as they get older. And you know what? If you have poor emotional regulation and you have attachment problems, it's going to make it difficult to have friends. That's going to make it difficult to adapt to school, which is going to make you depressed. Being spanked makes it harder for you to focus and do well at school. And you know what? You're going to start to model and act out on those negative behaviors by being violent or maybe engaging in substance abuse as well. And people who are abused as young children may carry that abuse into their romantic relationships and other negative risk factor kinds of behaviors that you see in early adolescence and early adulthoods. Okay? Now, any questions? We've run out of time. I am sorry for the long lecture. Did everybody enjoy the lecture today? We have 12 people here. I'm super excited by the number of people that came to lecture today. This was absolutely awesome. Thank you very much, folks. That's great. Good. Thank you for coming. That's all I had to say. These are the outcomes from today's lecture. Just remember, your discussion board is due tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. and we will be having the review session for this exam on Sunday night at 9 p.m. Does anybody have a question for me? If you do, please type it in the chat bar. I'll answer it offline. Or if you want, you can send me a remind text and I'll answer that too. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, and I look forward to seeing you next week.